Turning the ball over 3 times and allowing 24 unanswered points, that's not going to win you many games.
You are Locked On Boston College Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Boston, on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone. This is Locked On Sports Boston, the Locked On Boston College Postcast. This is your host, AJ Black, and I'm here to talk about today's loss against the Virginia Cavaliers. BC, they just weren't playing well, and you let up 24 points unanswered. You turned the ball over 3 times. What are you going to say? It was a bad loss. It was a bad game, and I don't know. you gotta look at this and say to yourself, this was hopefully an aberration, but the hope going into this game was this offense would be able to pick itself up, and it looked worse than I thought it was going to look. Thomas Castellanos had an awful game, just awful. He had 3 turnovers. One of them ended up being the scoop and score 6 that scored the game-winning touchdown for the Hokies, the Cavaliers. And he just never was able to get anything going after that first half. Now, this game was crazy because BC started the game off looking great. They went up 14-0 on touchdown passes to Jaden Skeet and Kamari Morales. It just felt, I actually texted this to Mitch Wolf of Eagle Insider. I said, wow, BC looks like a better team out there. Their defense was kicking the snot out of Anthony Calandria. And it was, all the momentum felt like it was going towards the Eagles. Like, you just felt like, at that point, right? That let's just talk about that. Like, everything's going okay. And then BC's defense just, holding them a field goal. And as they're hitting those field goals, you're going, okay, if Boston College's offense can just score a touchdown here, this game's going to be over. You have all the momentum. They can't seem to score touchdowns. But it just continued this cycle where BC would go 3 and out. BC would get a first down and then go 3 and out. It just wasn't like they could not stay on the field. And after a while of this, and I'm going to have to pull up the snap counts here, but it felt like, BC's defense was starting to wear out. You can only ask your defense to do so much. And when they are not able to get off the field because the offense is just continually putting them back there, then that's going to be a major problem. So I'm looking at the play total. So Virginia threw for 28 passes. So they had 75 plays for Virginia. BC's offense had 59 plays. So it was a little bit more towards Virginia, but I bet if you looked at the splits, the second half, it probably was way more in favor of the Who's. So, the second half starts off, you have the ball, you're up 14-6, they go 3 and out. And it's like, okay, that's bad. And you think, okay, maybe they can figure something out. They score on a touchdown pass to Malachi Fields. You knew that was going to happen at some point. And they get the scoop and score on an awful, Tommy Castellanos, we got to start calling these out that, yes, his heroics are fun at times, but there were 2 to 3 plays in this that he got sacked because he just didn't throw the ball away. Like, you got to fix that. Like, yes, you can scramble, and yes, that's fun, but it was killing BC. And then finally he gets strip sacked, and that was it. So this was a bad loss. There's no, the offense is a major concern for me right now, because this is another game where you were hoping that Boston College could find something to do, and they put up a total of 319 yards. I could blame the defense. I don't want to, though, because I don't think the defense played all that bad. They let up 1 touchdown again. It's the offense. Will Long's got to figure something out with this group. And, part of me blames the coaching staff. I don't particularly like a lot of the calls that were getting made out there. But there's other issues that I think are going on as well. I don't think the offensive line is playing all that great. I think no one's called it yet, but when you have a rushing attack that goes for 65 yards on 29 attempts, a 2.2 yard per game, that's an issue. And you look at the numbers, the big one obviously is going to be Castellanos, right? Like, he had 10 rushes for -9 yards. Yeah, that'll probably screw up your numbers a little bit. But Turbo Richards, he averaged 5.7. He only rushed the ball 9 times. Where was Turbo? Like, he was doing well, and then all of a sudden they would just go away from him. Like, he should have been much more involved because they were finding stuff with him. He was getting 4 or 5 yards a clip. And when that momentum was swinging, having a steady grind of Turbo Richard out there getting 5 yards. And then if you have to run a second, thing, run it with Castellanos or do something else. But they kept going away from it. And you got to BC is going to be a running attack. And when they go to passing and they become a pass first offense, that's a big problem. We saw it against Missouri. They had 2 turnovers in that game. We saw it today. They had 3 turnovers. And what's crazy about this is that Castellanos started this game off great. He threw 11 for 11. I believe it was like 2 minutes left in the second half, 2 minutes left in the second quarter before he threw his first incompletion. Like, the passing game was great, and then it wasn't. The rushing game was okay, but it wasn't. And so you got to ask yourself, what's this offensive identity going to be? Like, I've watched it a few games now, and one thing that is apparent to me is that the Thomas Castellanos that we saw rushing last year, like, I go back to like the SMU game where he was all over the place running the ball. It's gone. I don't know. I think that Bill O'Brien and his offense have kind of ripped that out of him, and I don't like that. I don't. He's got to be able to run the ball more. You see some of the QB powers and things like that and options. It's just, it seems like he's been drilled to look downfield more, which is fine, but got to be honest, Castellanos he's not the most physically gifted thrower. So like when he threw that last interception, that's because his arm isn't that great. And if he just if he could get the bootleg out and run more, I think honestly at this point the offense would be better. I think they gotta scale things back with him a little bit, because I think having him rely so much on the pass is making him less effective. His biggest asset is his legs, his ability to run the ball. And yes, I'd love to see him throw the ball more. And sometimes it's fun to, it's effective to see him throw the ball more. But you also see more mistakes. And we're seeing him now. He's now up to, 4 interceptions on the season? He's catching up to his old numbers. That's not good. Now, in a moment, I'm going to look at where things went wrong. Look at some of the things that happened in this game and talk about, what our expectations are now after a loss like this. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I saw that the Patriots are actually favorites tomorrow against the Miami Dolphins, which is crazy because I believe Miami is playing Skylar Thompson, which I don't remember much of him other than he played for Kansas State. But the Pats have been bad. Are you fading on them? Maybe you want to go over to FanDuel. You can get yourself started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet on FanDuel.com. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. We're doing our post-game postcast here on Locked On Boston Postcast. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Sometimes it's hard, but I've done this for years. We do the wins, we do it through the losses. This is a particularly tough loss because it felt like a game that BC should have won. Like, if they were able to execute at a higher level, they should have won this game. I think there's no other way about it. But there were mistakes, and they continue to make mistakes. And I think that's the key to this loss, was that BC continued to shoot themselves in the foot, and they couldn't, play a clean game. I put as a key to this game that BC needed to make a certain amount of turnovers. Like, the keys to my game for BC to win, none of it came true. They needed to stay on the field offensively. Didn't do that. They needed to cause turnovers, a bunch of turnovers. They weren't able to do any of that. They needed to, what was the third thing I said? Keep their offense on the field. I forget what the third one was. I had 3 keys, whatever it was. But the big ones, offensive staying on the field and turnover. Oh, Donovan Azaraku had a big game. And he did at times, like he stopped that 4th down and 1, but did he make any game-changing plays? He didn't. No. So every key that I put out there, they didn't hit any of it. Like Anthony Calandria, you were just waiting for him to make a mistake. He didn't. Credit to him. I didn't think he was all that great, but he didn't make any mistakes either. And when you're going into a game like this against a gunslinger who can throw the ball like that, you're hoping that maybe at some point you're going to be able to get a turnover and kind of flip the field. BC didn't get any of that. In fact, I was very concerned with it, where the secondary was at points during this game, because we saw Amari Jackson, and I don't know how bad that injury is, but when he's not putting weight on his leg, that's not good. We saw him go down, and we saw Kari Johnson get ejected for targeting, and I do believe that was targeting because he led with the crown of his helmet. That's 2 targeting fouls, ejections for Kari Johnson in the last year. That's not good. So you're down now to Cameron Martinez at nickel and Ashton McShane at corner, which is crazy. It makes me wonder. You brought in Ryan Turner, you brought in Bryquise Brown to be your depth guys. Bryquise Brown started for I don't know how many years for Georgia State, and Ryan Turner was a highly sought after recruit by Jeff Hafley. You expected them to play. I don't think you saw either of those guys in this game. You put in Ashton McShane, a true freshman, which honestly, like, he wasn't bad. I mean, he let up that touchdown, but that says something about the depth of this cornerback position. And if Amari Jackson is going to miss a lot of time, that's concerning, especially when you start playing guys like Kyron Drones and Pitt, who's playing much better in SMU. You need your best corners out there at this point, and you don't have them. So, I look at what BC, where things are at for the Eagles. I look at this as one game. This is one sample size. The mistakes. This has been something that Bill O'Brien has been very adamant that he wants, his teams to play as clean as possible. But this was you knew this type of game was going to happen. I expected it more against like Virginia Tech, a team that's a little bit more talented than the Cavs, but it's going to happen. This BC is good, but they're not great. And I think we can all agree that they're not great. And after today, we know that they're not great, right? They're going to make mistakes. They're going to have bad games. It's going to happen. I just worry that some of the things that I'm starting to see on offense are becoming more of a long-term problem than a short-term problem. It just seems like the offense is not clicking the way it needs to be. And Will Long has got to figure some stuff out there. The run game has gone backwards. Like, go back to like the Florida State game. And I know Florida State's a giant train wreck right now, but you had the ability just to run the ball down their throat. And the offensive line looked great. You were able to be physical. You could do all these things. You're not able to do that anymore. Like, and part of it is that they're just not calling the runs. Like, I gave you the 2.2 yards per carry. I don't think that's an accurate number, because I think if you look at their ability to run the ball, you had Kai Robichaux run the ball 4 times for 2 yards. You had Turbo Richard run the ball 9 times for 51 yards, and Trayshawn Ward 4 times for 8 yards. So my big question is, you got Turbo going. Why did they stop? Like, you could keep doing it. Like, you don't have to like get the home run ball every time. Just keep doing what you were doing. And it would have been more effective to keep your defense on the sideline. It would have been more effective to keep them rested, to not see yourself get yourself gassed, because that's what happened. Like, I see folks out there already blaming the defense. Folks, in the second half, the defense was out there almost the entire half. Like, what are they, at some point they're going to break when they're doing that. Bend, don't break is great when your offense can do some things. But if your offense is just completely inept and not doing anything and putting you in bad situations over and over and over again, you're going to break a lot faster. So, I'm worried that this offense has not found its identity. I'm also worried that this offense has kind of neutered its biggest talent, which is Thomas Castellanos. And because how many times did you watch him out there when he was like scrambling around, and you're yelling to yourself, run the ball, because that's what he did best last year. There were times where he would bootleg out and he'd be you holding the ball, holding the ball, holding the ball, holding the ball, and you're just like, get rid of it or run. And he would eventually get rid of it or throw it. But that's the big difference between this year and last year. Last year, he would have made that read and then in an instant just took off. And I think that's better for him. And I hope the coaching staff can see that. Like, teach him again. Like, when he's starting to feel the pressure, just go up. Go forward. Stop going to the sides and stop trying to throw the ball. Like, you gotta be like you're killing this offense doing that. I think those plays, if you were to go forward more and like have him get 3 yards, 4 yards, you're going to eliminate more of the turnovers because I feel like every time he turned it over, we're on those plays. And you would be keeping the ball moving. And that's what BC needs. BC's offense is good at just, moving the ball. And honestly, I thought Castellanos looked better throwing in the pocket than when he was scrambling. Like there was a couple of throws that he made in the pocket that were great. But when he kept scrambling, it was like, hold your breath. How bad is this going to get? Because that's how bad it was out there. And then you add all that in. Then I'm going to also I want to pull up the penalty numbers because that was bad too. Yeah, 8 penalties for 85 yards. I'm going to assume that the teapot that is Bill O'Brien is blowing a gasket over this right now because there were some really bad penalties in this game. They would have had 7 for 70 yards if Thomas Castellanos didn't pick some guy's head off on his interception. But there were penalties, the ones that I couldn't stand. There were 2 of them. So there was penalties, and then so there was the delay of game. I think it was on first down when they got the ball. There was another, and I'm going to pull them up right now because I want to talk about these. Where's my home? Away. Penalties. They got called 2 penalties. They had 3 personal fouls and 2 delay of games in a face mask. Personal foul called on Kari Johnson, which I guess it was Bang Bang. Then there was one called on Thomas Castellanos. And then there was one called on Ced McConnell. So 3 15-yard penalties on that. That's bad. And then 2 delay of games. Delay of games is inexcusable. And one of them was called when they had 10 guys on the field. That's coaching. That's whatever. They got to clean all that stuff up. And I'm sure Bill O'Brien is mad about that. Now, in our final segment, I'm going to wrap things up and get out of here because this was a bad one. And we got to wash this gross taste out of our mouth soon. We'll get into all that in just a moment. If you are like me, you love going to the theater, and I will love going to music, comedies, all that good stuff, and Gametime has got me covered. It's got a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Check it out. If you want to go to a show, you're going to know exactly where your seats are. And if you use the all-in pricing, it's going to give you all of the fees in it, so there's no surprises. So what you need to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create a code and redeem codes LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. Wrapping things up, this is Locked On Boston Postcast, the Locked On Boston College Postcast. I'm your host, AJ Black, and we're wrapping up a 24-14 loss to Virginia. And as folks have been saying, and I see all your comments up here, that things people are feeling pretty nasty about it, right? And we've got people saying, there are Eagles nesters that they said, I have messaged all season that TC has to throw the ball away more. It is absolutely the coaches. They insist on passing, even though this team is designed to run. Turnover Tommy's cheap shot was classless. Will there be any consequences from Teapot? Maybe make him the DJ at the next home game. Football fans back. Missed you. Yeah, there's no excuse for that. I thought that was a bad penalty, and you should, I don't know how you penalize him in practice, but that was inexcusable. So where are our expectations after this? I still think 8 wins is potential, but I need to see more. I need to see how this team and this coaching staff responds to adversity like this week. What do they learn from a bad outing like this? Are they going to adjust the offensive scheme to make Thomas Castellanos more successful? Are they going to, work on some of the things that just weren't working out there? Are they going to look at the game film and say, hey, we should have run the ball more here or should have passed the ball more here? I think that's all stuff that they need to look at. You next have Virginia Tech. You get a week off. We get to sit with this for a week and a half. That's going to be fun. And then you are off to Blacksburg for a Friday night game against the Hokies. That's a tough one. That's going to be another tough one. But how does this team react and respond to this? How bad are the injuries? Is Amari Jackson going to miss a lot of time? The way he was not putting weight on his leg, that did not look good. And that's going to be, this is the flow of a football season. There's ups, there's downs. This is a very big down for Boston College. For the first time, it felt like this team was outclassed. I'm sure Bill O'Brien is not happy with this team right now because they are very on top of this kind of stuff. And losing a game like this is not something that they should have done. Again, I go back to the beginning of this game. They had everything running, and then it just took a second for this thing to fall apart. And it fell apart, and it was more like a slow car crash than a train wreck. But it still ends up being the same result. It's still a car accident, right? Like, no matter how fast it happens, the car's still going to get destroyed. It was a slow car crash. That's exactly what this was. It took forever for it to start to happen. But once you started to see that BC's offense wasn't doing anything and they weren't changing and nothing was adjusting, it felt like a foregone conclusion that they were going to lose this. And so letting up 24 unanswered points, 3 turnovers to 0, 85 yards of penalties, that's going to lose you a lot of games. So, I see people already yelling about Bill O'Brien and all that stuff. I'm not there yet. So this is a 1-game sample, but it stinks. Losing a game like this isn't fun. So we will be back on Locked On Boston College with Mitchell Wolf on Monday. I'll have him on. I'll get his thoughts about this game, and I'm sure we'll have some great overreactions between now and then. But make sure to follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Follow this podcast. Hit the subscribe button on this because I'll be coming live after every game. And you can get all my thoughts and analysis instantly after the game ends. And follow me on Locked On Boston College. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll be back again for Locked On Boston College on Monday. And the next postcast won't be until after the Virginia Tech game, where it'll be another late one. I love those. This is AJ. Thank you all for listening. I'll see you all again for another Locked On Boston postcast.